Welcome to the Tools for Today's Farmers podcast, brought to you by the Purdue Extension Farm Stress Team. Our podcast will cover current issues in farming and will provide insight from a wide variety of experts in agriculture. Now let's get farm strong. Hello, and thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Rachel Dilhoff.
And I'm your co-host, Abby Heidenreich.
And today we're excited to welcome Jason Barber to the podcast. You might know him by his nickname Duck, which he also uses on his Facebook and YouTube pages, Farming Blind with Duck. Jason is an 8th-generation cattle farmer from southern Middle Tennessee. He manages more than 100 acres, raises beef cattle, and harvests thousands of small square bales of hay each year, all while living with vision loss caused by retinitis pigmentosa, which is a degenerative eye condition. He also serves as assistant chief of his local volunteer fire department and relies on a combination of assistive technology and determination to keep doing the work he loves. Through Farming Blind with Duck, he shares behind the scenes look of his life on the farm and hopes to encourage others facing similar challenges. So again, thank you so much for coming. That was a quick introduction. I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I think you pretty much summed it up. I said I'm a legally blind cattle farmer. I'm here in southern Middle Tennessee. I'm about 50 miles southeast from Nashville, just a little rural community. I've lived here. I'm now 54 years old, and I've been here all my life. I've lived within a mile of where I was actually born and raised. So the farm itself that I own and operate, it's been in my family since 1866. And I guess one of the things that I've had to deal with is not just the vision loss, but for several years, pretty much most of my life, my dad and I operated the farm together along with my grandfather, but my grandfather passed away in 1997. So it's since that point, it's been me and my dad. Well, in 2020, my dad passed away. He had Parkinson's and dementia. And so we knew I was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa in around 1998. I was deemed legally blind in 2009. Fortunately, we knew that the vision loss was going to continue to get worse. So fortunately, we went ahead and started adapting the farming operation to kind of compensate for the vision loss to make it more, quote unquote, accessible for somebody who's visually impaired. And of course, my dad knew it, knowing his age, was going to catch up with in his health. We never knew that he was going to be passing away as soon as he did. But luckily, being introduced to agribility and a lot of other assistive technology avenues, it's been able to help me keep doing what I want to do. So there you go.
And tell us a little bit, how did you get the nickname Duck?
Well, if you only see me walk, you would probably know. But no, actually, honestly, back when the local volunteer fire department started here in Unionville back in 1983, my dad was one of the founding members, which he actually was the first chief here, and I was only like 12 years old then. But I was fortunate enough to be able to tag along with him for many, many years. And a friend of mine actually, he always aggravated me about the way I walked because I had a waddle about me, so he started calling me Duck, and it just stuck within the department then. And then once some of my friends started picking up on it in school, it sort of took off from there. He always said my feet would kind of point out when I walked. And he said I was the only person he knew that I could walk between 2 rows of corn and knock them both down.
Oh, that's amazing.
Anybody that calls me Jason, if they just call me Jason or call me Duck, if you call me Jason, there's 2 things. You either don't know me or somebody's really mad at me. So most everybody that knows me, everybody knows me as Duck, and that's kind of how I let it go because I think it keeps the conversation more personable.
Absolutely. So, Duck, tell us what a typical day looks like on your farm now.
Well, right now we're just kind of contending with the weather. We start our hay crops. I've got everything sitting on go. I spent the last about the last 3 weeks ago, getting my equipment serviced and washed and getting everything ready to go for that. Right now, it's just kind of waiting on the weather. I periodically, my actual farm, the 100 acres that I own, is a mile down the road from where I live. So I periodically, or maybe once or twice a week, maybe more, I'll go down there and kind of check over my livestock and make sure everything's good to go there. So that's, I'm not a big farming operation. I have approximately 30 head of cattle. So I've actually, quote unquote, dwindled my herd down to where it's a lot more easier for me to manage on my own. So that's kind of where it's at now.
Well, now, so that sounds pretty typical with farming what you do. So how does your vision loss make this different? Like how does it affect your daily operations and how you manage things?
Well, to back up on things, it's when I found out about my eyesight, not knowing that my dad his health was gonna get where it was, such like that. As far as it actually affecting me, one of my primary obstacles that I knew was going to affect me at some point, but luckily my dad had been here. Uh, we worked together as such a good team. He was kind of my eyesight, even though his health was deteriorating. Where you hear a lot of people, you got your brains and the brawn of the operation. I guess Dad was the eyes and I was the brawn. So the manual stuff I would usually take care of because I was in a position that I could still, even today, do most anything I put my mind to on the farm. That's a characteristic of my family. Don't tell me I can't do something because I will prove you wrong one way or another. And one of the primary hurdles was my livestock have identification tags in their ears, and I knew it was going to get to the point where it was getting bad enough reading the tags, but I knew that once my dad passed away and wasn't going to be able to do that for me, where was I going to be? So luckily, by getting introduced to agribility and the Star Center here in Tennessee and discovering so much assistive technologies, that's been kind of the godsend, I would say, as far as being able to continue doing it. So now I can still accomplish things by not only using the new age technologies. I use a lot of old school persistence and some of the things that my grandfather taught me then. So I've been able to kind of compensate for it. And my vision loss has been gradual, and it's never, I won't say never, but there's no cure or no treatment for it right now. But it's such a gradual loss that I just simply adapt to it and able to compensate on my own to make things, make it happen, so to speak.
Well, that's amazing. And you talk about your history at eighth generation. That's amazing. That's been in the family for a long time. And so being an eighth generation farmer, that's a really powerful legacy to carry. Do you feel like there's pressure to keep it going, especially just with everything you've faced? And then how do you navigate that?
Well, to how I navigate it, well, God is a forefront because I mean, if it wasn't for Him, I wouldn't be in the position I am, and luckily He's blessed me with opportunities. And there's a long backstory, and for those, of course, I won't dive into it a whole lot, but if you really want to know the backstory of my childhood and the firefighting and the farm and my vision loss, on my YouTube channel, I actually have a full-blown documentary. It's an hour-long story of my journey and how I've been able to cope with my vision loss and such as that. So if I think you can probably include a link, but it's the title of my documentary is "Walk by Faith, Not by Sight: The Journey of Jason Duck Barber," and I created this documentary to show people and tell people the story of how it is. Now, when it comes to how I've been able to cope, and naturally the stress level of, I knew that it was coming at some point as far as my vision loss was going to get worse, but then the death of my dad, because honestly, on the farm aspect of things, Dad was the financial backer. He was retired and he had to set himself up financially able to continue the farming. And I'd always wondered, okay, what am I going to do when Dad's gone? Because, financially, me living basically on disability and trying to maintain and operate a family farm, and which I had promised him as well as his sister before either one of them had passed away, that I was going to continue this farming operation as long as I could. And I had their blessing to, once it became inoperable, whether it was my health, my eyesight, financial, whatever, that I could consciously release the farm and sell it if I needed to be able to continue on my life. But luckily, I was able to learn and grasp a lot of knowledge from my dad as well as my grandfather, even my mom, to be able to quote unquote stretch a dollar and to get the most bang out of your buck. So luckily, it's turned out very well financially. I'm obviously not getting rich, and I'm not going to get rich on a farm, but I am able to not go in debt necessarily and keep things rolling. So that stress level, being introduced to agribility and the technology thing like that helped probably more than anything, taking the stress off of me, because I was able to say, okay, my worry was, how am I going to see this? How am I going to see that? But with the technology like it is, I can use that as my eyes, since now my dad's gone. So I'm able to continue. So that in itself is a way that's helped me lower the potential stress level of operating the farm. Because if I didn't have this assistive technology and we stepped back 7 or 8 years ago, I really don't know what I was going to be able to do as far as functioning.
Absolutely. And that your sense of purpose really comes through in the way that you talk about your work and what you're doing. In a recent interview, you said, it's more than money, it's passion. And it's clear that this isn't just a job, it's something so much deeper for you. And that's a theme that we hear a lot with a lot of different generational farmers. Can you kind of describe what that means to you for people listening who might not understand that?
Well, I was just always brought up that, a man's word is his bond. And when I told my dad and promised him and his sister both before they passed away that I would continue farming this and doing what I'm doing, I'm not going to, they know even now, even though they're not with me, they knew then when I made that promise that I would hold to my word and do what I say. And it would be a huge emotional shock when I do have to get to the point that I have to let it go, or just face up to reality is I just can't do this anymore, because can't never was in my family's vocabulary. I mean, obviously there's things that's going to come down to, even now there's things that I'm physically, and then admittingly, I just can't do. But one thing about finding, when you say can't, when I get to the point I say I can't do it, that means that I really cannot do it. And people around here, the friends and neighbors and family that know me, if I call upon anybody in my neighborhood and said, hey, I need some help, can you come help me do this? They know that Duck has exhausted every possibility, and he's at the point that he needs help. And that's why I've never lacked for getting someone to help me out. I'm going to explore every possibility to make it happen before I call for help. You can call it persistence, bullheadedness, or whatever, but that's just kind of the way I operate. And that's my family legacy as well. My grandfather was that way. It don't matter, even in his later years, don't tell him he can't do something.
Right. Well, and that's funny that you talk about that, because that is something else that we find very often with farmers, and many of us come from farming families too. And yeah, that persistence, that bullheadedness, like you said, that's very strong, and that's a really common theme. And it's neat that you talk about relying on support, and you're not afraid to do that. So you've talked a lot about technology as a support. Can you go into a little bit more detail about what exactly that technology looks like? Technology is fascinating, and just how, like you said, how far it's come. But I would just like to hear a little bit more about what exactly it is that you find helpful, and that helps you with the everyday operations on your farm.
Well, up till I discovered agribility, and I'll say up till well, let's go to 2000, late 2018, early 2019. I was still using the old, I'll call it now, antique flip phone. And that's all I had. I didn't have a smartphone. I didn't even want a smartphone. And actually, I was having to use reading glasses a lot of times with my flip phone to read the text. But through all the accessibility programs that I was able to get in contact with, I was able to obtain through a grant a free smartphone, an iPhone. And of course, after a lot of, there comes the perseverance and the bullheadedness trying to learn how to use it, because whenever you're visually impaired, you use an iPhone totally separate from a well-sighted person. So meaning the gestures and everything's different. So I couldn't just call a phone somebody that had an iPhone and say, hey, can you tell me how to do this? Can you how to do that? So because all the gestures are different. So I had to self-teach myself on how to use it. But with that, that actually opened up a whole big deal as far as assistive technology, because at that point, then I was able to tap in a lot of applications that were designed for the visually impaired. So, such as the Seeing AI, which is it reads it's an OCR, text recognition, scene display. It'll read your currency. It'll give you a lot of information there. And that was kind of, which it wasn't perfect, because the thing about what I was trying to do, a legally blind cattle farmer, just anybody visually impaired working with livestock was sort of unheard of, because there's a lot. I mean, why would somebody blind want to work with a 1,200-pound cow? You can't see it. Why do you want to? And trust me, I've been run over. I ain't gonna make no beefs about it. But I try to, again, as my dad and I, we prepared for this, and we started adapting the farm with corrals and sweep tubs and alleys and chutes and self-catch, to where I could actually maintain and work my livestock by hand. And then there for a long time, even in my early days, the technology, the eyesight was decreasing in a fashion that the technology, you just had to find something would work. And that's another characteristic of my dad. I know an application or a device is designed to do this, which really wasn't designed for somebody working with cattle. But I like trying to find out what it really can do. I know what it's designed to do, but I want to know what it can do. So I'm actually having to make some of these technologies that wasn't designed for the visually impaired or even somebody in livestock do something that it's really not created to do. So I don't do this, say it to brag, but I like to dig and research. And my eye doctor, he told me, you'll see this in my documentary, he said, Duck is an innovator and an investigator, meaning he's an innovator as far as doing things that most people, even well-sighted people, probably wouldn't even tap in to try to do. But the investigative side of him, well, he wants to dig into something and find out what it really can do and make it do something that it wasn't designed to do. But to fast forward into the new age, and I've made this point clear before in some other interviews, is now technology is actually staying ahead of the vision loss, because now AI is starting to become the wave of the future. And that's where it's really exciting to see how artificial intelligence, which some people think, especially some of your old school people, is like, well, AI, oh Lord, that's first thing, that's going to take over the world. That's the devil, it's going to be the death of us. And of course, my comment to them is, well, you probably said the same thing about the internet when it came out, but you can't live without it now. So it's not what it is, it's how it's used. Yeah, you can make anything be used in a bad fashion, but if it can change your life and make you be able to do things that never would be thought possible, then you can call it what you want. So, but AI, that's definitely the thing that's coming around now. The Chat GPT, Google Gemini, and there are others out there as well. Meta Ray-Ban, the Ray-Ban glasses, that's coming on pretty well now.
Yeah.
So the technologies are really, 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 really taking off.
That's awesome. So tell us, you mentioned AgriBility. For the people who might not be as familiar, what is AgriBility and how have they helped you?
Well, AgriBility, just in a nutshell, it's located, I think, in 21 states across the country. And if your state doesn't have an agribility program, I highly recommend your state investigating it and getting into it, because agribility, what it's designed to do, to just put it in a nutshell, it's an organization that helps farmers who are disabled, no matter what their disability is, whether it's mobility, hearing, vision, even veterans that may be dealing with some kind of military-based issue, whether it's not only an injury, but even PTSD or something like that that's got them incapacitated in some fashion, to find a way to help them farm. Now, when I say farm, that don't mean you got to have 100 acres and 30 head of cattle. You could have a little 5-acre garden or something like that. But and agribility is not necessarily an organization that will buy things for you or purchase anything. They're just that primary first link in the chain, the conduit that's established to get you in contact with the right people that can help you. It's just like here in Tennessee, when I first found out agribility, and there's a real unique story how this was even discovered, and this goes back to my documentary. They came out for a farm visit once I found out about them. Eileen Legault from the University of Tennessee Ag Extension, she came out and done a farm visit along with a local. I told them, actually at that time my dad was still living, and we told them what the long range plans was about our farm. Then they put me in contact with the local vocational rehabilitation services. I met with them, and that proved to be a little bit difficult, just for the fact they really couldn't grasp what I was trying to do. I said, they're more about job retentions and finding jobs. Well, I had a job, and then they were asking me, well, how much money was I going to make? Well, at that time, my dad was still living. I said, well, I'm not worried about making money right now. I'm trying to set myself up to when my dad gets debilitated or even passes away, and
Right.
This farm is now in my lap. How am I going to do this? So, and then they wanted to know, well, how much money are you thinking about you're going to make? I said, well, it's a farm. Who knows? Nobody can predict in farm life. It's not like I'm going to get paid $700 a week at 52 weeks or whatever. The numbers are always up and down. But I had to try to sell it what I was doing to them. But luckily, they came on board. They granted me the services. Then they put me in contact with an organization called the Star Center, located in Jackson, Tennessee. And that group will actually, more or less, they would come out and evaluate your situation, find out what you feel like, or they feel like you need to perform the task. They'll write the information up, just any sort of assistive technology. Like I had an OrCam for a while, which that proved out it didn't really work good for for what I was doing, an iPad, just any sort of assistive technology and that don't mean electronically. That could be anything that can help you perform your job is a form of assistive technology. So once they more or less evaluate, they would draw up a list of items that they feel like I could use. Then they would return that back to vocational rehab. And vocational rehab would be the actual organization and group that would purchase what you need. So agribility wouldn't purchase anything, but if it wasn't for agribility, you wouldn't even start that chain going. So
Okay.
luckily, it's all a group. I mean, I say a link in a chain, but it's all one big unit. Just every piece, it's just a piece of the puzzle. And without one of the pieces of the puzzle, you can't make it complete.
Right, right. And that sounds, I mean, and you don't know what you don't know. So it's good to have those initial chain reactions, if you will, that get you ultimately the things you need to be able to thrive and continue what you're doing. And along with that, I'm gonna sort of shift a little bit, and talk about your social media presence because I know I was looking at it and I've seen your interviews and it's so neat and amazing to hear about your story and what you're doing and how you're doing it. I'm curious to know what kind of response have you had on social media? Has anybody reached out to you and shared their challenges? Or what kind of stories do you have from that?
Well, yeah, honestly, it's been kind of surprising since which I launched my YouTube channel, Farming Blind with Duck, about I guess it was about a little over a year ago, about February of last year. And the main purpose of it was even people here that know me and around me on a regular basis still, even today, ask me, they're like, well, if you can't see well, how do you do this? Of course, everybody hears the word blind and they want to put blindness in one package. But blindness means a lot of things. I'm not in the dark by no means. With retinitis pigmentosa, my central vision's kind of is the worst of the part, but I use my peripherals. But I wanted to, instead of me trying to explain people how I can be legally blind and do what I do, I thought, well, I'm just going to show you. So I created the YouTube channel, so different scenarios and different things that I do on the farm where I feel like that somebody will be like, well, how can you do that? Or how can you do that? Now I can show you. And actually, I had a friend of mine, his younger daughter was just, I don't know how she even found my channel or whatever, but he called me and he's like, I was steepling up a fence. And in my video, I was like, people may think I'm faking this, or they could think that, but look at what I'm doing now. And I had the hammer and I had the fence steeple and I was fencing, driving it in a tree. And I wasn't even looking at the steeple. I was looking at the camera. And I'm like, I can't fake this. Look, I'm not even looking at what I'm doing. I hear the sound. I can tell by this and I can tell by that. So to elaborate on your question more, I've had even people that are non-farmers. I had a gentleman from down in Louisiana that seen one of my stories on YouTube, and he reached out to me, and he actually worked for Louisiana Transportation as a mechanic, and he's visually impaired. And I had a farmer from Connecticut reach out to me, and we were actually on the phone a couple of days ago because he was trying to use Chat GPT, and I was having to coach him through how to go about setting it up. So, like I said, Abby, met me at the Agribility in New Mexico, and of course, as you can tell, most of them, I'll talk to a fence post. If you got something to ask me. I'm an open book, and I'll try my best to help anybody because that's just how I was raised, and that's being involved with the fire department and being involved with community service and outreach and public speaking. I've just done it for years, so it's just kind of second nature to me. So and that's why I try to show people. I mean, that you don't have to be a farmer to maybe grasp on what I'm doing. Somebody may watch this and well, heck, if he's a farmer and he's able to do this with this technology or whatever, well, I don't see why I couldn't do what I wanted to do. So that's kind of where that's at. So I've had very good feedback. I think I'm up to, I've lost track now, probably 470 or 80 subscribers now. And it comes in spurts as far as the growth. Of course, the YouTube algorithm, I've never figured it out. I don't know how it gets out there and gets who it gets and people find it or such as that. So I just kind of go off the word of mouth and hopefully get it spread out there. And then I've got a Facebook page of the same name, Farming Blind with Duck, and it has a little more. I've got some historical where my great grandfather he run a general store off my farm years ago. The building's still there today. So that kind of gives a little bit more historical.
Oh, that's amazing. What a neat legacy that you're still continuing. And I know listening to you, and I think everybody can relate, farmers or not, hearing your positivity and hearing how you're not letting any challenges stop you. That's amazing. It's so easy to get down on yourself and just continue down that rabbit hole. And I think what you're doing, how you're talking about it is so uplifting. It's such a positive energy and just that motivation that people might need to hear. And I think that's amazing. You're sharing that story with us, and hopefully everybody listening can also get a lot out of what you're saying. And again, just really thank you so much for talking with us and having this really powerful conversation. I know you've opened my eyes up to things I never even knew existed, and things that people can take advantage of. And I also, you've talked about your social media. But is there anything else you want to share with the audience? Maybe like one more last word of wisdom, or any kind of tip you just want to leave people with?
Well, it's like I said, I'm always looking to help people, even if it gets to the point that I can't farm anymore. I think, God set me up to be able to communicate with other people. And I've always said, even with agribility, in which it's, 6 or 7, 8 years ago, I never knew what agribility was, let alone be able to travel the country and go to conferences and talk to different people. Honestly, when my dad passed away in 2020, I had no clue where things are going to end up at. So being able to get involved with agribility and being able to communicate with so many different people, and now, being involved with podcasts and news medias, and it's really overwhelming on what I can do. So, and I've told everybody I'm limited in a certain aspect as far as transportation and things like that. But if there's any point in time that anybody needs me, or if I can help in any fashion, if I need to come and speak or share my story, and even in person, it's like my local church here, the fire department. I say, I'll do anything you need me to do. You just get me there and get me home, and I'll do whatever. So, I'm more than welcome to share, podcasts in person or whatever. And if there's any inspirational, or maybe not inspirational, but just motivational or encouragement that somebody needs. Because honestly, as you said, I could very well get down on myself, and trust me, it has happened and it will happen. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I'm a ray of sunshine 24/7. Whenever you find out that there's something that you've been doing most of your life and you just simply at the point you can't do it anymore, that gets discouraging. And as I tell Melissa, my wife, that I said, I don't like to be beat. That's one of my famous sayings to her. She said, well, just call somebody to help you. I'm like, no, I want to figure this out. I don't like to be beat. So I'll try every way in the world to figure it out if I can. So I want to pass that along to other people as well.
Awesome. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Duck, for talking with us today. And I want to thank all of you for listening to the Tools for Today's Farmer podcast. If you'd like more information about the Purdue Extension Farm Stress team, you can go to extension.purdue.edu/farmstress, or you can find us on Facebook as the Purdue Extension Farm Stress team. We use the hashtag FarmStrong on our posts to emphasize that the ag community is resilient and is strong enough to overcome anything that comes their way. You can share your story of overcoming stress on social media using the hashtag FarmStrong.
We're your hosts, Rachel Dilhoff and Abby Heidenreich. Have a great day.